Greetings, fellow citizens of the vast Obsidian community. Welcome to another video in the Obsidian for Noobs video series, featuring tutorials, tips, and tools for new users of the Obsidian personal knowledge management software. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate a handy tool for creating CSS snippets for use with Obsidian. I call it the CSS Snippet Constructor. It's a web application that I'm making available for use online. It's completely free to use, and I'll put the link in the video description. I created the CSS Snippet Constructor in collaboration with an artificial intelligence LLM. I supplied all the CSS code to the AI LLM and then gave it a detailed prompt explaining exactly how I would like the user interface to look and function. The result, I think, is quite impressive. The CSS Snippet Constructor provides 34 complete CSS snippets that can be used to style a wide variety of Obsidian features: text, tables, callouts, side panels, navigation panel, tabs, you name it, and there's likely a snippet there to style it. This CSS Snippet Constructor is a much improved version of the old CSS Snippet Creator, which was the subject of my very first YouTube video. I've learned a lot more about CSS since that time, and I've added many more CSS snippets to my collection, and so I thought that I would take this opportunity to share what I've learned. Okay, with all that said, let's see this thing in action. Okay, this is the Obsidian CSS Snippet Constructor. It's online. Let me go full screen so you can see everything. The interface is pretty simple and straightforward. There's a drop-down box here that lists all the different style effects that you can use. Once you select a style effect from the list, the CSS code for the snippet appears in this box here. You can then click on this button, Copy to Clipboard, copy it, and then utilize it in your Obsidian vaults. This button clears the box, and this closes the snippet, although the close button I don't think works. Up here you can click this to copy the link to the app, but I'll provide the link in the video description as well. All right, let's jump in and look at the first snippet. Block quote BG color. BG stands for background. I click on block quote BG color in the list, and I get the CSS code that sets the block quote background color to black in this case. Let me say something in general about these snippets before I get into this one in detail. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. What these things do is they set the style for features in Obsidian vaults. In other words, their appearance. And by and large, you'll see that these snippets generally affect one of two things: either the color of something or the thickness of a line. In any of these snippets, you can change that color or that thickness value to adapt the snippet to your own personal use. So you're not stuck with the snippet exactly as it is. For example, in this snippet, it sets the block quote background color to black. If you copy this snippet and use it in your vault, you can change black to any color you want. And you can do that with any of the snippets here. Just realize that there's some flexibility involved, and you're free to change the values in any of these snippets to suit your own personal purposes. Okay, in these snippets, whenever you see anything contained within a slash and an asterisk, as you see in the first line here, that's called a comment. And it's not executed as part of the snippet. It's not really code. That's there for human beings. It's there to provide information to a human being about the snippet. I've placed at least one comment in every one of these snippets explaining what the snippet does. For the more complex snippets, you might see a few comments. So this one, it says, sets the block quote background color to black. I'm not going to demonstrate this one. Let's move on to the next one. Bold text color. This sets the color of bold text in your vault. In this case, it sets the color to light yellow. Again, you can change that color to anything you want. Let me demonstrate this one. I can use it to review the process for using CSS snippets in Obsidian. By the way, I have a video in my YouTube channel entitled Creating and Employing CSS Snippets in Obsidian. That video goes into great detail about how you use snippets with Obsidian. I'm not going to go into that much detail in this video here. I'll briefly go over it so you can follow along, but if you really want to understand how CSS snippets work and how you employ them in Obsidian, give that video a look. Okay, I'm going to copy this code to the clipboard by clicking the button, and then I'm going to move to my vault. Okay, I'm in the vault. To use that snippet in my vault, I first have to open a plain text editor. Windows Notepad works well. Notepad++ is another option. There are several plain text editors available, but it can't be a word processor like Word. It has to be a plain text editor. So I'm opening up Windows Notepad, and I'm going to paste that code that I copied into Notepad. Then I'm going to save this snippet with any file name I choose. It says bold text color here. I'll leave it at that. However, the file extension must be CSS. You can see that by default, Windows Notepad puts a TXT extension on the file because it's a text file. But Obsidian expects CSS Snippets to have an extension of CSS. So I'm going to save that. Where I save it is in the Snippets folder in my Vaults folder. I'm already there, but let me back out a little bit. This is a list of several vaults I have on my computer. The one I'm using is this one down here. So I'm going to open the folder for the vault. I'm now in that vault. These folders are all part of the vault. The one I'm interested in is the .obsidian folder. That's where the snippets folder resides. So I'm going to open that, and then I'm going to open my snippets folder. That's where I'm going to save this CSS code. By the way, let me point out that the dot in front of Obsidian for the .obsidian folder means that that's a hidden file. Excuse me, that's a hidden folder. The dot in front of Obsidian indicates that .obsidian is a hidden folder. Windows hides folders for a good reason. There may be files in the folder which, if you mess with them, you could screw up your system. If you don't see the .obsidian folder in your Vaults folder, you'll have to find the mechanism by which you can reveal hidden files in your system and hidden folders in your system. If you do that, be careful, all right? Once you make the hidden files visible and the hidden folders visible, be careful not to screw around with anything that might cause problems. Okay, I've saved the snippet to the snippets folder of my vault. Now in my vault, I open Settings, and I click on Appearance, and I scroll down to where it says CSS Snippets. And I should see that snippet here. It's listed by the file name I gave it. And remember, you can give it any file name you want. Obviously, you should give it something descriptive so you know what it is. This snippet sets the bold text color, so that's a good name for it. And then to activate it or enable it, just click the switch to on. Now, back in the vault, in one of my notes, if I type bold text, which we do using Markdown with 2 asterisks, I see that it takes on the color that was in the snippet, which I believe was light yellow. If I go back into Settings and turn off the snippet, you see that it's in the normal white color. It doesn't stand out as much. Let me turn it back on and demonstrate something else. I mentioned before that once you create the snippet, save it to the snippets folder, and activate it in Settings, you can then change the values in it if you like to reflect what you want. And it becomes very easy to do that. Once you've gone through that process of creating the snippet, saving it, and activating it in the vault, I'm going to change this to red. I'm only changing the color to red. And now I'm just going to resave the snippet. And when I resave it, you'll instantly see the bold text here turn red in color. There it is. All right, so again, once you've created the snippet, you've saved it to the snippets folder, and you've activated it in Settings, you can then change the value or values in that snippet, resave it, and immediately see the effect. So you can play around with this. I'm changing it to light blue now. I hope that's a valid color. Yes, it is. All right? And you can play around with these until you get things looking exactly the way you want. Okay, so that's the process. Just to review it quickly, at the CSS Snippet Constructor, Click on the effect that you want, copy the code to the clipboard, open up a plain text editor like Windows Notepad, paste that code into the plain text editor, save it to the snippets folder of your vault, give it any file name you want, but make the file extension CSS. Then go into Settings, Obsidian Settings. Under Appearances, find the Snippets section and activate or enable the snippet by switching it on. And that's the entire process. Again, my other video that I referenced before goes into this in much greater detail. It really gives you a very nice overview and lesson on how CSS snippets are created and how they're used. But I think that's enough for us to follow along with here. All right, let's go back to the snippet constructor and look at the next effect. Bullet size. This sets the size of bullets in a bullet list. I felt that the default bullet size in Obsidian was too small, so I used this snippet to make it a little bit bigger. This EM here refers to a fraction of the font size that you're using in your notes. So it's a relative size. This is 0.33, about 1/3 of whatever the font size is. I'm not going to demonstrate this one, but you could go through the same process we just went through, copy it to the clipboard, paste it into Windows Notepad, save it to your snippets folder, activate it, and then change this value with a bullet list visible. And you'll see the bullets get bigger and smaller, and you can play around with the number until you get it to a size that you like. Okay, moving on. This is a CSS class, and it sets the heading 4 color. In that other video I referenced, I go into detail about what CSS classes are. Again, to briefly mention it here, the other snippets we just looked at affect your vault globally, in other words, in its entirety. So when we set the bold text color to light blue or red in that other snippet, any note that I put bold text in will be affected by that snippet. It will have its color set to red or whatever the snippet said. There are cases where you don't want the style effect of a CSS snippet to affect everything in your vault. You may want it to affect only one particular note or selected notes. In cases like that, you use what is called a CSS class. And what you do is you activate this snippet in the YAML front matter property of the note where you want to employ it. And I'll demonstrate that process now. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, so if you find it confusing, check out that other video. I spend much more time with it and go into it in great detail. I'm going to copy this code to the clipboard, and then I'm going to open Windows Notepad and paste the code in there. Now, before I save this snippet, I'm going to copy this part that's in front of the squiggly brackets, in this case, H4 green. By the way, as it says here, this CSS class sets heading 4 color to actually green yellow, and there's the color. And again, as we saw, you can change this color to anything you want. This is the CSS class, and I'm going to copy it. Now, the period that precedes it is required in the CSS snippet, but you do not want to use it in your vault. You only want to use the word or phrase that's here. I'm going to copy this now so that I can use it in the front matter, in the YAML front matter property of the note. Okay, now I can save the snippet. This snippet is heading 4 color. So I'm just going to call it H4 color. I have the CSS extension. I'm in my snippets folder, and I'll save it. Oh no, I'm sorry. I want to make another change here. I'm going to name it CSS class H4 color. This is a convention that I like to use personally. You don't have to do this, but whenever I'm saving a snippet that involves a CSS class, I like to put that in the name of the snippet so that when I look at the snippets in my vault, I can know right away which ones involve a CSS class. In other words, they're used to affect individual notes, as opposed to the ones that have a global impact that affect the entire vault. Again, you don't have to do this, but I think it's very, very handy so you can see at a glance exactly which snippets affect just notes and which snippets affect the entire vault. So I'm saving that to the folder. And then I'm going to call up my vault, go into Settings, Appearance, scroll down to CSS Snippets, and activate the snippet. Go back to the note. I'll get rid of this bold text here. And let me do a heading 4 text, which in Markdown is 4 pound signs. Now our snippet is setting the color of that to green-yellow, but I don't see that here. It's white. The reason is, as I said before, this is a CSS class. It only goes into effect when you activate it within the YAML front matter property of a note. So I'm going to open that up now by typing 3 hyphens underneath the note title. I'm going to select the property CSS classes, and here I'm going to paste that little phrase that was in front of the brackets in the snippet. This here, that's the CSS class. Remember, it has to have a period in the snippet, but no period when you use it in the vault. And you can see when I put that in, it activated the snippet and it changed the text color to green. All right, that's a CSS class. This is only affecting text in this note. If I go to another note and I type heading 4 text, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not green, it's white. When you use a CSS class, it only affects the note in which you activate it in the YAML front matter properties. The other snippets we use, like the bold text color, affected your vault in its entirety. They have global impact. Every single note is going to be affected by them. So that's the distinction between a CSS class and a snippet that does not involve a CSS class. All right, let's go back to the CSS Snippet Constructor and look at the next style effect. Another class, note background color and font color. And that's exactly what this does. It's setting the background color of your note to midnight blue and the font color to ghost white. I'm not going to demonstrate this one. I don't know that you'd want to set your note colors. I put a lot of snippets in here just in case I ever want to use them. Some of these I use all the time in virtually all of my vaults. And other ones I may have had little or no use for, but thought they might be handy. And basically I wanted this CSS Snippet Constructor to serve as a record for the snippets that I either do use a lot or think I might use at some point. Again, this is a class, a CSS class, so this is the thing that you would put in the YAML front matter properties. Whatever comes after the period and before the squiggly brackets. So if I wanted to apply this to a single note, I would open up YAML and stick this in under the property of CSS classes, and then it would affect only that note. All right, let's move on. Another class, table borderless. This completely hides the borders of your table. And I'll demonstrate this one. By the way, if you've seen, I have a video called, I think, Multi-Column Text in Obsidian, where you could create text that looks like it's in a magazine article with several columns on a single note. And the trick I used to do that was I created a 3-column table, put the text in the different cells of the table, and then I used this snippet to hide the frame of the table, or hide the borders of the table. Once the table was invisible, it looked like you had 3-column text. But let's take a look at this thing. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. Oh, by the way, remember, this is a CSS class, so this is the secret phrase I'm going to use here, the magic phrase to accomplish what I want. I'm not going to copy it yet because I first have to copy the code. All right, so I've copied to the clipboard. We'll open up our Windows Notepad again, clear it out, put the new code in. I'm going to save this as CSS class. Borderless table. And remember, the extension has to be CSS. And I'm in my snippets folder. All right, now that it's saved, I can copy the CSS class designation that I need to put in the YAML front matter properties. In this case, it's table-borderless. We'll get rid of that. We'll call up the vault. Let's put a table in here first now, without activating the snippet. So insert table. You can see the table here. It's very faint, but you can see it. When I go into settings and activate the borderless table class, nothing happens because it's a CSS class. Nothing will happen until I include it here. I'm going to paste in now the name of this class, and when I do, and it activates, you'll see the table disappear, or actually the table's borders will disappear. All right, I'm going to hit enter, and the table's gone. All right, that CSS class makes the borders of a table disappear. The table's actually there. It's just the borders that are missing. Let's put some text in here. And let's activate that again. So you can see the table's there, the contents are there, the borders are gone though. That comes in handy sometimes, and this is a snippet that I use on occasion. Okay, let's go back to the snippet constructor and on to the next one. CSS class table dashboard design. I have another video in my channel about creating a dashboard for your vault using CSS, and this is the snippet that I used. It creates alternating colors in the rows of your table. Just give it a nice visual effect, and then you can put the links to the various notes in your vault in that table and use it as a dashboard. I'm not going to demo this one, but if you look at that video, you'll see this in more detail. Table header background and text colors. In a table in Obsidian, the first row are header cells, and they're treated a little differently than the other cells in the table, which we can call the body of the table. And since Obsidian treats them differently, they've provided variables, CSS variables, so that you can affect them differently. In other words, you can set the color of the background and the color of the text in the header cells alone without affecting the cells in the body of the table. Now there are other CSS variables that allow you to affect the cells of the body of the table, but the point is you can affect them independently of one another. This particular snippet sets the header text color, in this case to black. Here's another comment to make it clear that this is the text color. And it sets the background color to sky blue. And again, you could change these colors, save it with your own colors, and see what looks good to you. All right, I'm not going to demo this one either. The last class here, set table text colors. This sets the text color for the header and for the body cells. So this makes the header color yellow and the text color green. Let's take a look at that. I'll copy it to the clipboard. I will open up Notepad, place the new code in there. I'm going to save it as CSS class table text. Since it's a class, I'm going to need the magic word here, or the magic phrase that I'm going to use in the YAML front matter properties. So I'll copy it, and then I will go in my vault. Let's put some more text here. In YAML, I will put that in. And when I hit enter, we should see the headers take on a yellow color, the text, I should say, and the text in the body of the table take on a green color. Let's see if that happens. Oh, I didn't activate it in settings. See that? Let's put it on. There you go. Header text color yellow, body of the table text color green. And again, as we saw before, we can mess around with this. I can make the body red, save it, and we'll see it take immediate effect. So you can experiment with different colors, get it the way you want. Okay, let's go back to our constructor. All right, this is one I really like a lot. Custom callout. You're probably familiar with callouts in Obsidian. If you're not, I'll show you one real quick. Let me get rid of this stuff. I'll do insert callout. This is the default callout. It's of the type note. I believe there are something like 12 or 14 different types built into Obsidian for the callout. And if I get out of it, I'll activate it. And that's what a callout looks like. And you can put text in here. You can add whatever title you want and so forth. But the basic thing of the callout is it has a title. You can put contents in, and these could be several lines of text for the contents. And each different callout type has a color, its own color, and its own little icon symbol here. And like I said, I think there are 14 different types. Here's the different types. I set this up earlier. This is the note. This is the one we're working on now. It's a blue color, and it has a pen icon. There's one called abstract, clipboard. It's greenish. Info, to do. That's a little information symbol. That's a little check mark. Tip, question, warning, failure, danger, so forth and so on. These are the standard ones. I don't know how many are. There's about 12 or 14 here, something like that. If you go into it and change the type, so if I make that danger, I now get the danger type callout. And you can change it to any of the types that are built into Obsidian. What we're doing here is we have a CSS snippet that allows us to create a custom callout. In other words, we can create our own unique callout, giving it our own unique color and our own unique icon. And this is a pretty handy trick here. Let me demonstrate this one. I'll copy it to the clipboard. I will call up my notepad. I'll put the code in there. And I will save it as custom callout. It's not a CSS class. Custom callout.css. Make sure I'm in my snippets folder. Get rid of that. Go into the vault. Let's change this back to note. Of course, note is the default one that you get whenever you set up a callout. And I'm going to activate the snippet in settings. And then I'm going to insert a callout. Only now, instead of note, or any of the other types that we saw, I'm going to put the word custom. And when I do that, it assigns to this callout the color and the icon that are indicated in the snippet. In this case, it uses an RGB color, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. And I'll talk about where you get the icons from as well. But the idea is now I'm making a snippet of my own design here. And there it is. If you look at the, I'm making a call out of my own design. If you look at these standard callouts that are built into Obsidian, none of them has a star. Where was that here? Callout types. If you look at the icons, pen, clipboard, there's no star. All right? This is a unique custom callout. If I change the color value here, or if I change the color value here, or I change the icon, it'll be reflected in the callout. I believe you do not get a real-time effect with the icon. In other words, unlike the other snippets I showed you, that if you change a value in here and resave it, immediately changes in the note. I think the color will immediately change, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't think the icon will change. However, any further callouts you create will have the new icon. Okay, so where do these colors and icons come from? The colors you can get from online. There are a whole bunch of online color creators. This is a nice one here. I'll put the link to this in the description as well. You can select the color you want. Let's give this a nice blue color. And then there are several formats that you can get codes for the color in. Hex is the most commonly used one, but in this case we need, let's get rid of this guy. In this case we need the RGB color, the 3 numbers. Click this to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it into the snippet. And I'm going to resave it, and I believe this will change. It did. It changed to that blue color. Unfortunately, it looks darker here than it was there. Let's see if we can get a lighter color. Let's go for a yellow. Yeah. Let's try that. Okay, that's nice. As far as the icon, Obsidian uses icons from a site called Lucide. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's Lucide. And I will show you that site. An open source icon library. And these are the icons. If you hover over them, you'll see the name. If you put the name that's listed here for a particular icon in your snippet, in this spot here, right after Lucide hyphen, then you'll get that icon in your callout. You have to have Lucide, you have to have the hyphen, and then you put the name of the icon you want. So let's get a nice one here, and I'll demonstrate that. Something that really stands out as being unique. Here, let's take the hand. All right, hand is the word. In place of star, I'm going to put hand. I need Lucide and hyphen, I put hand there. Now when I save this, I don't think it's going to change in the existing callout I created. I think it'll only change on new callouts, but let's see. So file, save. No change there. However, if I create another custom callout, insert callout, in place of note, type custom, and then activate it. There you go. You see the hand is there now. So this is the one exception where you do not get an instantaneous change when you resave the file with a different value. Remember, the color changed right away, but the icon will only change on subsequent callouts that you create. All right, so now that you've seen this in action, I think it makes more sense. For the custom callout, you're creating your own custom design callout by indicating the color that you want it to have and the icon you want. And you saw all those icons that the Lucide website had. So there's lots of possibilities here, and naturally there are zillions of colors. So you can create callouts far beyond the limited number of types that Obsidian offers. And I think that's a pretty nifty thing to have. Okay, let's go back to our Snippet Creator and see what's next. Heading color. All right, we saw that before. I changed, I think, heading 4 color. Let's go back and see. Yeah, this was a CSS class to change heading 4 color. So that's where you use the YAML front matter properties, and it applies only to the note where you put the CSS class. This one is not a CSS class. It says body. That means it affects the body of the vault, the entirety of the vault. And it's setting heading 5 color to light sky blue. Now, as I said, you could change this color here if you want. You can also change which heading is affected by simply changing the number here. So if I put H1 instead of H5 and save the snippet, it will apply it to heading 1 color. If I put 6, it'll apply it to heading 6. So you can put the numbers, any number from 1 through 6 here, and create a snippet to affect the color of that particular heading type. And then naturally you can change the color value and make it any color you want. So this is very, very flexible. But this is a vault-wide global CSS snippet to change the color of various heading texts. Horizontal line color. Exactly what it says. It changes the color of horizontal lines in your vault. I wanted to keep it pretty much to what it was, dim gray. I think dim gray is a little bit brighter than whatever the default is. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but just to do a line, you can see it's barely visible. I think dim gray is a little brighter. And what you'll see in a moment is there's another snippet to change the thickness of the line. And I do that as well to make the line more visible. So this changes the color of a horizontal line. Yeah, the very next one changes the thickness. And it uses that EM value again, right? That's that a relative size relative to the text size you're using. Let's look at this one, since it involves a size. I don't know. We did the borderless tables. By the way, I forgot to mention in that snippet for the borderless tables, the way the code made it borderless was that I set a thickness of 0 to all the various lines and sides of the table. So that was a thickness one, and I set it to 0, and that made them disappear basically. So like I said, these CSS snippets either affect colors or they affect thicknesses of lines. Let me copy this to the clipboard. Let me put it in a notepad file. I'll save it as line thickness, CSS extension, snippets folder, go into the vault, settings, line thickness, turn it on, and the line is a little thicker now. But let's get crazy and make this 0.9 and save it. And you can see the thickness of the line now is ridiculously thick. But like I said, you can play around with these. So I'm going to try 0.35. That's a little thick, not too bad. 0.25. And you could set it to anything you want. Okay, so that's horizontal line thickness, and the one before it was horizontal line color. Moving on. Italic text color. This sets the color of italic text to red. It's kind of like the bold color one we did. This is body, so it's vault wide. If I wanted to set the color of italic text to only specific notes, in place of body, I would give it a CSS class. That can be anything I want. I could put period, italic, hyphen, red. I don't believe you can have spaces here. So if you want more than one word for your CSS class, you have to use hyphens. I'm pretty sure that's required. So I would put period, italic, hyphen, red, or whatever I like, save it, and then in the YAML front matter property for the note, I put italic, hyphen, red without the period. And after I activate it in settings, then that will affect the color of italic text within the notes where it appears in the YAML front matter property, but not throughout the entirety of the vault. So again, this one affects the whole vault. All of my italic text would be red everywhere in my vault on every note if I use this snippet as it is. If I change this to a CSS class, then I can select which notes I want this to affect. Okay, next one. Left side panel background color. All right, that sets the background color to this left side panel here. I'm going to demonstrate that, but I'm not going to demonstrate that particular snippet in itself. What I'm going to do is this. Let me actually handle this differently. Okay. This is a snippet that I have in this vault, but it has not been activated yet. I'm going to activate it in a moment. I call this my Master CSS Snippet, and I use this in pretty much all my vaults. I have a video also on this. I believe it's called Creating a Master CSS Snippet or CSS Master Snippet for your vaults. It's not exactly the same as this one because I've added a few things to this since that day, but it's very, very similar. What I've done is I've figured out all the style changes and settings that I want to make to my vaults, the various things that I want in all of my vaults. And I put all those little individual CSS snippets together into one gigantic snippet, as I call it, a master snippet. You could see this little block of text sets the color of heading 6 text to sky blue. This one sets heading 5. I've got all the headings to a different color. This puts a folder icon in front of the folder names in the navigation panel. This sets the color of note titles, and this sets the color of note weights. I will show you that in a moment. That's in the CSS Snippet Constructor. So again, not all of these are in the constructor, but most of them are. One of the many snippets in this master snippet is the one we were just looking at that sets the color of the left side panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate that master snippet now. Now a lot of things are going to change. You saw there are all kinds of blocks of snippet code, CSS code in that master snippet. And when I click this on, many things are going to change. But one of them is going to be that side panel. All right, you see it's black now. It's a nice rich black. I think it makes the folders and the files stand out better. So that's what this snippet is doing. This particular snippet here is setting the left side panel background color. In this case, to black. Again, you can change this color to anything you want, resave it, and make it green or blue or whatever you like. Other things that snippet is doing, it's setting the color of the folder titles to this cyan color. It's setting the color of subfolder titles to red. It's putting this folder icon in front of the folder names for the main level, and it's putting this icon in front of the subfolder names. I do have the code to put these icons in front of the main folder names in the constructor. This I don't because I learned this after I made the constructor. But actually, I'm planning to do a separate video just on the CSS snippet to affect all of these things in the navigation panel. So that should be a video you'll see coming soon. And several other things are done here as well. I reset the color of the right side panel. I set the thickness and the color of the note titles, and that's all the notes. So that's global. I set the color of the tabs here. I particularly set the color of the active tab as opposed to inactive tabs. So if I make this active, it gets the bright color and this gets the dull one. Just lets me see very easily at a glance which note is active. Another setting I have here is the active file in my vault is yellow, so I know that it stands out from all the other ones. So for example, this is the one I'm working on now, test note. You see it's yellow. If I wanted to delete this for some reason, I know very easily, very quickly, I can see which one it is, and I could right-click it and delete it if I wanted to. In Obsidian's default setting, you know, everything here has that kind of a grayish white color. I was having a hell of a time trying to distinguish folders from notes, which note was which, and I decided to color code things. And I just find it so much easier to work with and less likely I'm going to delete the wrong thing. I can just see at a glance what are the folders by the colors and the icons, what are the subfolders, what are the individual notes. It's just very, very helpful. And like I said, a lot of this is in the snippet constructor that we're looking at. In fact, let's go back to that and see some more. All right, so that sets the left side panel background color to black or to anything you want. This removes underlining from links everywhere, in other words, throughout your vault. I don't like my links underlined, so I created this snippet to remove the underlining. Obsidian colors the links anyway. I think it makes them a purple color if I'm not mistaken, so the underlining is really not necessary in my opinion. This is one I put in every vault, and it's in that master snippet also. Sets active nav panel file color. That's the one you just saw where the file that's active, the note that's active, has a yellowish color over here as opposed to the other ones being white. That's being accomplished by this CSS snippet here. It's not yellow, it's actually pale goldenrod. That's the actual color that is set to. All right. So whatever file or note is active in your vault, in the navigation panel, it will take on this color. And again, if you make it red or pink or something or green, it'll really, really stand out. Nav panel file name color individual. This sets the color to a file name in the navigation panel that you specify. In other words, a particular file. You tell it the name of that file, and it sets the color for that file and that file only in the navigation panel. In this case, I'm telling it that I wanted to set my dashboard file to pale turquoise. I don't think I have a dashboard in this vault, but I have a file. I have a folder. I do. Here it is, right here. That's the dashboard file. And in my master snippet, I have that exact code that we just looked at here to set it to. And I believe that's the color too, pale turquoise. I think I copied that right out of my, my master snippet. I like my dashboard file to stand out from the other files, so I've done that. If you have another file that you want that is special to you and you want it to stand out for some reason, you can use that code to change its color. Just put the name of the file in the quotes here and then set the color. And you can pinpoint any particular file in your navigation panel and assign a color to that file. That's what's happening with this. This sets the folder colors for the main level in the navigation panel and the first sub-level, which is called the first child level. So going back to my vault, you can see that the main folders have a cyan color, and the subfolders have this, I believe it's hot pink color. All right, now this code that we're looking at does not put these icons in there. It's strictly affecting the color of the folders. Again, like I said, I like things to stand out for me when I'm looking at the navigation panel so I can glance over and see what's what right away. And you can see that by assigning colors to the folders and the subfolders, it accomplishes that very nicely. All right. So I put extra comments here so you can see what's going on. This code is affecting the top level folder color, setting it to cyan, and that's what we see. And then this code is affecting the first child level, in other words, the first level of subfolders. I didn't go any deeper. You can go deeper with this, but I didn't do that. And it's setting it to hot pink. So again, these are the actual colors you saw in the vault that I was using to demonstrate. This is a very handy snippet. You can see it really makes things visually clear. Okay. This code puts that folder icon in front of the folder names in your navigation panel. So that's accomplishing putting this icon here. This is something separate. I don't have it in this constructor because, like I said, I just learned it recently. But I will do a video on just affecting the navigation panel with all these different features in one nice snippet. But at least you have the ability to put folder icons if you want to in front of the folders. By the way, this is just an emoji, a Windows emoji. So you can highlight this thing and press the Windows key and period, call up the emoji selector, and then select a different emoji and put it in there and have that instead of the folder icon. This sets the no title color, light steel blue. That's what you see here. I like that much nicer than the default color. Also, you'll see I have another snippet coming up that sets the weight or the thickness of the font here, of the note title. And this is actually thinner than you would naturally see if I turn off the master snippet. That's what a normal note title looks like. I think that's kind of ugly. It's that bland white. It's a little too thick. But when I put on the master snippet, one of the many snippets in there is the one we're looking at now, which sets the color of the note title. And it sets it to that nice, whatever it's, steel gray, light steel blue. And I think immediately following this, yeah, here we go. Note title color, note title weight. This sets the weight of that. That's why the text is thinner in the note titles. I use this snippet as well in my master snippet. I believe the range is from 100 to 900. I'm not 100% sure on that. But again, you can take the snippet, put different values in, resave it, and settle on one that looks right to you, that suits your taste. So one to set the note title color, another to set the note title weight. If you put them together, you can create note titles that look similar to what I have or whatever you want. Okay, let's see. This sets the font in reading view to Times New Roman. I just played around with this. I saw it online and I copied it. I don't particularly care to have the font in my reading view as Times New Roman, but I thought this might be a handy thing to have around in case I ever do want to change that font for some reason. Oh, by the way, I mentioned, let me go back to that, that I found this online. Some of the codes in the CSS that you're looking at here in the CSS Snippet Constructor, I created myself. Some I created by tweaking code that I found online. And some of them are exactly the way I found it online in a forum or something because I'm a novice at CSS. So I can't do the more complicated ones. And this is one that I'm using in its entirety from what I found online. I really don't know how this works. This is not something I'm aware of. So I just copied it and used it. So there's kind of a mishmash here of ones I created, ones I tweaked, and ones I just used that I found online. I'm using them the way they appear. Right side panel background color. As I showed you, I changed it to this color, whatever this happens to be. So I made the left panel a real thick, dark black. I made this one this color. I left the central panel what it naturally is, whatever the default color is. I like the panels to stand out from one another, and this does it nicely without it being anything garish. I mean, if you like bright colors, that's fine. If you'd like this to be yellow and this to be green, it's not my thing. I'm more, I like things plainer and this worked very nicely for me. So that's what's happening there. That's the right side panel color. This is one that I took from online. Again, I have no idea what this is doing. I mean, why it works the way it does. Here it's using a hex color. In many of these, or most of them, maybe all of them, well, no, not all of them, but most of them, you can use the word color if there is a word for the color. Not every color has a word designation, but many do. Or you can use the hex number, and there's a hex number for every color that you can pick from a standard color picker. If we go back to that website for picking colors, remember that one of the options is hex. So you can copy it. You can pick a color from here, copy the hex number, and then you can paste it into this or any of the snippets that involve colors, and you can use it that way. You can use the hex number if you like. The only one that I'm aware of that you can't use it for was the call out. That had to be the RGB. It won't take hex. It won't take words. All right, so that's the right side panel background color. Right side bar or side panel tabs color. That's this. I made these black. I wanted them to stand out, so I made them black. Now this is in the main body of the main work area of the vault. It sets the active tab color to slate blue. Remember, I showed you that the active tabs and the inactive tabs have different colors. If I open another tab here, the active one has the brighter color. The inactive ones have the duller color. That's being handled, or at least the active one is being handled by this code. I have separate code for the inactive one. So this sets the active tab color in the work area. This one sets the inactive tab color. That's dark slate blue. That's why it looks like the same color, just a little darker. This sets the color and width of table borders. So if you want to change the border color of the table and you want to change the width, you can use this code. I'm going to go to my vault and I'm going to shut off this master snippet because I have this in the master snippet and I want to demonstrate it as an individual snippet. So we're back to the dull, bland default vault appearance here. And let's copy this code, put it in Notepad. And I'll save it as table border color width. And I'll change the extension to CSS. Make sure I'm in the snippets folder. And I'll save it. Let's get into the vault. Let's get rid of these guys. Let me make a table. You can see the default color and thickness of the borders of the table are so light that you can barely see the table. But when I activate this snippet in settings, that's what we get. I made the borders a little bit thicker and I changed the color. This is a snippet that I use in all of my vaults. It makes the table stand out really, really nicely. So that's what this is doing. This is a very handy one. And again, you can, save it, activate it, and then start playing around with the color and the thickness and, get it to look exactly the way you want. Whatever color you want, whatever thickness you want. This sets the background color of the table. We didn't play with that before, so that's the actual color of the cells of the table, and I think it does all of them if I'm not mistaken. I think it makes them all green. This sets the table cell text and background colors. This is the header. I believe it's the header text color. This is the table text color and the table background color. This is setting the text colors for the active and inactive tabs in the vault. All right, so we had snippets, two snippets, one to set the background color for the active tab, one to set the background color for the inactive tab. And then we have this snippet that is setting the text color for the active tab and the inactive tab. And again, you can change those colors. This changes the color for when you highlight text in a note. I won't demonstrate that. And then finally, the text selector color. This is when you select text. This one I do want to demonstrate, so I'll copy it to a clipboard, and I'll call up my vault, and I'll call up Notepad. And I will save it. I'll call it text select color. Now what's happening here is this. If I want to do something to text, like let's say I want to make it bold or italic or something, I select it first. And the color that Obsidian uses to select text when you're in dark mode is almost invisible. It's not really that clear that this text is selected. This snippet changes the color that Obsidian uses to select text. So when I activate that snippet, and now select text, you see it's much clearer. All right, the snippet changed it to, this is an RGBA color. I don't even know what this is. But I experimented around till I found one that wasn't obtrusive, that let you see the text clearly, but also made it very clear what was selected and what wasn't. And this is one I use all the time as well. I find this really, really handy. It was driving me crazy not to realize which text I was selecting when I was working with it. And I believe that was the last one. That is it. I want to demonstrate one other thing. Let me copy the link to this website. And let me go into my vault and get rid of this. In this note, I'm going to open up Web Viewer. And I'm going to put this note alongside it. And I'm going to create a table. And I'm going to add several rows to this. Uh-oh. Oh. I'm going to paste I'm pasting the URL of the constructor in here so that the web viewer can go there. There it is. Now what I'm going to do is, this is a way, if you want to, you can make a collection of any or all of these CSS snippets. Create this structure where you open a note with a table in it on one side, and you open up the web viewer on another side, and use the web viewer to go to the constructor. Then pick a snippet. Okay, copy the text to the clipboard, and then paste it in that table. Now, you don't want Obsidian to execute any of the symbols here, which it might try to do if they look like markdown symbols. So highlight this, right-click, and format it as code. That prevents Obsidian from trying to execute this. When it sees an asterisk, it thinks it's italic and so forth and so on, so that it will appear the way it's supposed to appear. And then here you can put whatever this thing is. And you could keep doing this for any of the code you want. Highlight it, format it as code, put something that identifies it there. This, by the way, is happening because of one of the snippets that's activated. And you could keep going like this, and you could create a table that is a collection of any or all of the snippets that are in the constructor, and then you can have it available to you in your vaults whenever you want it. And you could keep going like that until you have an entire collection. Just continue on in this way, calling up code, copying it, pasting it into the table, identify it, and go on and on like that. So that's just a handy tip, a nice way to use the Obsidian Web Viewer and this snippet constructor for you to create a collection of CSS code. In fact, the idea for the CSS Snippet Constructor came to me as a result of this. I actually created a table like this for myself, where I accumulated all the code that I've used and learned about and figured out and created in one place in one of my vaults. And once I made that table, I got the idea to use the AI to create an interface that would display all this code in a nice, handy way. Okay, so there you have it, the CSS Snippet Constructor, a handy, easy way to acquire an extensive collection of CSS snippets to use in your vaults. If you're interested in doing your own CSS styling, then access the online CSS Snippet Constructor and take advantage of the many snippet code blocks it offers. Whether you want to learn to do CSS yourself, or you just want to take the CSS snippets and use them as is in your vaults, the CSS Snippet Constructor can be a valuable resource and tool. Okay, fellow Obsidizens, that's all I have for now. I'll see you in the next video. Happy note-taking.